It's Sunday and it's beautiful out. And this morning it was like below 40 degrees. I was so disappointed to find out last night that it was going to be cold as all else because it's been so nice for the past, I don't know, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, almost a month now. It's been just really, really nice. And then, oh man, just that reminder that at any moment, some kind of Arctic intensity could pierce our wonderful warm bubble and remind us that we still live in a chaotic climate situation. And that's not even like that's not even to mention the human induced situation like that they're experiencing in the desert out in Dubai, which I think is just kind of hilarious. I'm pretty sure that geoengineering is like illegal, or it's like one of those things that UN members are like supposed to agree to not do, but maybe not. What was it like a year's worth of rain in 10 hours or something extreme?
Yeah, it was like 100 centimeters. I forget because I they were giving it in metric, so I don't want to say 100 inches. Um,
I saw it, it reminded me of the pictures of Vegas or China when it flooded. Like just entire streets just getting washed away. Like their airport was there was water
yeah,
up to like the center of the hubs of wheels.
so they reported it 142 millimeters, aka 5.59 inches in 24 hours, which is a fucking lot. And that's where it's like because of the size of the city, that ends up being what, like trillions of gallons of water, probably.
Yeah, and they don't have any drainage, like none. City of the future can't get water out of the streets. Oh, it's got to suck to be there because they lack the infrastructure to deal with this kind of climate catastrophe. It's the same. Well, it's not the same. It's similar to when like they had the ice storm in Georgia like a decade ago or whatever, and it was just image after video after video of people sliding off roads, cars piling into each other on the bottom of little valley, well, hills. And it's like, yeah, of course that's going to happen. They don't have sand trucks, they don't have salt trucks, they don't have bulldozers or like snow plows. Like, and so when a super modern city that's designed around the desert where it barely ever rains, like gets some like I read something. It seemed like the cloud seeding company, they admitted to it. They're like, yeah, we were doing some testing or something like that, where they like dumped their chemical solution in an area that has like historically zero wind, and so it just hung out there and catalyzed in the atmosphere and started like essentially like an atmospheric uh, waterfall, and it just hung out.
Yeah, and they were trying to make it seem like it wasn't from cloud seeding at first because they didn't want people to be like, "Oh, conspiracy theory." And then the news had to come out and be like, "Yeah, cloud seeding was it was a direct contributor to what just happened. It wasn't the only reason, but it
No,
was a
no.
direct contributor."
If they hadn't have cloud seeded, it wouldn't have happened. But the area they chose to cloud seed made it possible for this just to go to like spiral. I guess snowball doesn't work in the desert, and sandball doesn't sound nearly as cool. They just lost control of it, and that's some.
Which it's crazy because then I saw a karate combat event taking place in Dubai yesterday or on Friday. So I'm like, I guess they got it cleaned up.
Well, it flushed
This seems.
everything out of the streets. Anything that was on the streets.
I was just wondering, like, how long things would be ground to a halt, and it seems like they tried to get everything moving almost immediately. And I think one of the issues was like a bunch of people came into the city for a cryptocurrency conference in the first place. So it had a bunch of people from outside reporting on it in real time. And I think that's where like they couldn't, I don't think they would have like let it just, you know, sit or anything. But I think they had to kind of take care of it quicker than they necessarily would have because a bunch of outsiders were like, hey, look what's happening here. Because I think, I know I saw it on, it sucks that things go to Twitter before the real news, but I think that's,
Oh, there's still sections of highways that are flooded.
oh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But Twitter doesn't have filters, so a lot of the stuff that was showing up, people were then making fake videos and adding like screaming noises. So it was like the things that were being shown were then being exacerbated by people making fake videos that were going to Twitter. So it's like then the media didn't know what was real, so they couldn't report on it immediately. So I think that's, you know, the fake news that we get from people. I don't know what the impetus is besides just pure engagement farming, which Twitter is now trying to ban. And it's like that can only work for so long, where people click on something and are brought to it because of deceptive editing or just a flat out lie in the title for clickbait. But the fact that Twitter is now banning engagement farming, it's like we have a short, I mean, I'm glad it's finally over, but the window for this like inundation with information that we don't know whether it's fake or not, that window is finally starting to close. And I think it's because the bad people spammed it, as you know, they're not gonna hold back. They're not gonna you know, pace themselves by taking advantage of people. So it's like, because we had so many AI scams and shit proliferate so quickly, I think that's why now Twitter has to even start banning engagement farming. So it's like there is a light at the end of the tunnel for this weird information period in which we live.
This is interesting. CNN is spinning it as a at the end of their article about it. They're saying it's a festive atmosphere. The rain wasn't as miserable for the young. Schools moved to distance. People were out in their kayaks. They're fishing out in the streets because fish escaped from their captive environments. The man-made ponds have just, you know, the fish are out. Oh wow. No, I think you're right. I think that from what I'm not active on social media like I was. I'm not hanging out on anything really. Uh, from what I've gleaned, there's less of a reflection of like the Twitterverse or of what's happening on Facebook or even TikTok. I'm not seeing as many references to that now, like the era of let's just use the content that was created by the end user and put on social media as the basis for our, you know, video in, you know, whatever brief write up about said product. I think that's over. I think that companies are actually starting to generate their own content again. I think you're right. There is a, you know, it's like a specter of doubt that lurks behind any media organization that relies solely on media that's harvested from the end user of all people. The people who are supposed to be consuming the content.
I think they've been burned too many times at this point, and they've harvested content from people who have some weird racist shit or some weird misogynist shit on their profile. If you just dig like 4 comments deep,
Yeah.
and that's where it's like they can't just mine these people anymore, because a lot of these people will do edge lord shit for the engagement farming, and when they actually end up going viral, it's not because they're geniuses, it's because they like shoot a bunch of shit at the wall and something eventually sticks.
Yeah, just because someone manages to capture video that's quality. I mean, and by that I mean it's not shaking. We can see what's going on. There's no attempt at additional commentary. There's no blown out mic noises. Like, as long as somebody can do that one time, that's not like that doesn't give them a pass to get into the next room. That just means they lucked out one time and got good video. But then the phenomenon of somebody who captures that video going viral and all of the content they have on their whatever social media like becomes like, the soup of the day for the internet. That's just insanity. That's like the most that's barely filtering anything. Like that's like going for the whatever rises to the top from the first scoop. I think you're right though. I think that media itself is going through kind of a refinement phase. It turns out people don't like AI, but only if they're led to believe that there's no AI involved and they find out later. But if AI is like announced right out the gate, like, oh yeah, this is some AI stuff, people are like, oh cool, let's appreciate it. But oh no,
Well, one is
being honest,
deception,
yeah,
and the other is transparent. And I think that's the issue. Is like
yeah,
if there's transparency with the introduction of the technology, then I don't think people feel like they're being manipulated or deceived, and they
exactly.
get a chance to judge it on its own. Oh, because this is okay. This is actually really promising. So, one of the things that has happened is a bunch of AI bros have been hired, and the workforce has started embracing these AI bros. But what has happened is they're not living up to the first test of what it means to be in these positions, because one of the things about creative output is it takes a lot of iteration. Nobody gets shit right on the first try, no matter what. Like, even if you're like a person at the highest pinnacle of their craft, even those people go into studios and have multiple takes for a reason. And so, even not just in the context of like sonic art, but visual art, it's like people do pencils before they start their paint, or they start their pencils before they do their inks. And so it's like you don't just go straight into ink. Some people get to the point where they go straight into the inks, but those people have been, it's like there's so many hours in those people's inking that they can make mistakes and correct it before anybody realizes they have a chance or that they've made a mistake. So it's not like they don't make mistakes. They just get really good at covering them up before anybody sees them. And so there's, in all of that, the first thing that anybody puts out is going to need some iteration. And the AI bros can't get past that point. They don't know how to take criticism. They don't know how to take feedback and then reiterate to what the person's actually wanting. And so you're seeing these stories of people who were like hired as AI prompters and they can't get to what the goal is. They can get close. And sometimes the first thing that they put out, it gets further away from the goal instead of getting closer, because they're not actually like, and then you're finding out a lot of these dudes don't even know how to use Photoshop. So if you're, or not dudes, but people. So it's like, if you go in and you're doing AI prompting to create images, if you can Photoshop your work and edit it and get it closer to what they want, that's kind of what they're looking for. But these people can't even do Photoshop. So I don't think.
Oh, they're trying to do it
that,
all within some kind of inference engine and then just get it all to render at once.
some people are going that route, but others then try to Photoshop it to get closer, or some sort of edit video or image editing to get it closer to what is desired, but they don't have the proper skills to get it to that point. So it's like, even those people are not getting to the point where it's getting closer. Because then also, if it when what you're talking about, apparently what's happening is like if somebody's only doing prompting to try to iterate, then it'll start hallucinating. And
Oh
so
yeah.
like say you're doing like they say that people are requesting a field with a bunch of trees and there's butterflies and there's grass and there's a pond, these things that they're all requesting and they want it a certain way. Well, then after like the fourth or fifth iteration, the AI just starts like adding extra things that aren't requested, like humans. So there'll be like a human walking around in this park. And then the people will be like, well, we need to take that human out. And so then when they go to adjust it to take the human out, it does something else to overcompensate. So it's like, it's basically somebody who's trying to like not veer off the road, and every time they try to correct they overcorrect, making their eventual exit from the road even worse.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like they're not getting to the point where it's meeting, because the main thing is a lot of these people are like they're not visual artists, so they need a visual artist to create the thing that they see in their head, and they have a very specific thing in their head even though it's not actually specific, and it's somebody's job as a visual artist to get that thing into the real world. And the closer a person can get to that thing, the better, quote unquote, they are at their job. And it sounds like these AI prompters are really not good at this specific type of idea manifestation, even though that's their specific fucking job. Like, if you're an AI prompter, like that notion of a job is explicitly being good enough with words that you can manifest something from this machine. Well, it turns out they're not as good as they thought they were.
So I was reading about building tensor models and the training of tensor models and large language models, and it turns out that there's this really sharp diminishing return when training for periods of time. Like if the attempted volume of information is too big, and it starts bleeding into that diminishing returns point, all of that learning is wasted. And like you said, the AI starts to hallucinate. It's one thing, I think, if someone's going for crazy wild fantasy morphing shit. That's one thing, because if it's a dream, sure, anything is possible. But when someone's trying to make something really specific and the machine is hallucinating because it's been generating for an hour solid, I'm surprised anyone can get anything useful. You know what? In fact, I, I'm willing to wager that a bulk of the images that look successful are actually some kind of image to image based inference, because when the hands are right, that to me tells me that they started with a picture with accurate hands to begin with, somewhere in the process. And that's not the kind of thing that's like intuitive when you're looking at these images, and you look at and sometimes they even supply the prompt they use, like, oh yeah, this is how I made it, this is the seed, all this stuff. Sometimes even if you follow all of the steps, it doesn't come out that way, and it's like, this person had something else going on. There's no way that some of these, even I've got like 160 gigabytes of safe tensors, and some of them are cool and some of them are absolute crap. Like do not do what was promised kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of obfuscation of the process involved. That
Well, and I think one of the problems is if you just go to a human, that iteration is so much quicker. And that was the big promise of this premise, is that time would be less, even though now it's demonstrably not less. So I think that's where this AI hype train is gonna crash and burn way quicker than anybody anticipated.
Well, sure. I think for some things it's useful. Like it can generate icons like crazy fast, good icons too. You know, like digital buttons for programs, and I'm sure it could generate 8-bit. I bet it can generate all the way up to 32-bit sprites, like all day long, all day strong. They'd look awesome. But I don't think you can tell it to like generate a level of Mario and have it make any sense at all. Actually, I'd be afraid of the level that the AI generates for a Mario, a Super Mario challenge. Like it'd be possible, sure, by like 0.0001% of the gaming population, if it's even playable.
Yeah, it's really strange to see this rush towards language learning models from a group of people who have no real humanities training. Um, because it's like not even just forget about the ethics. Like we're seeing that, yeah, these people didn't pay attention in literature or English or like whether it's the ability to follow grammatical rules or use language stylistically and flourishes, they don't know either. So having these people, this specific group of people try to build this engine and then also use this engine is a huge like to say creative dead end is like overshadowing the fact that they think that they can just go steal from real artists and get away with it. So it's like, on the one hand, I think it's funny. Obviously, there's some dangerous element to it, but because none of them are actually good at art or good at being creative, it's going to fail disastrously. All they can do is steal from real artists. That's all they can do with this. And so once they steal from the wrong entity, this shit's over. That's all it's going to take. You start stealing from the fucking Adobe uh fucking font set or the Adobe like image like
Oh yeah, their image,
their
their
license
free
free their
image.
license
Ugh.
images or anything that's in their fucking library, making it seem like, oh, this is a license free image. Well, that's true, but you can't then use it to build another product that's going to make their product incur damages, which it directly will, and they will have a fucking argument that people using AI prompters reduces the number of people using Photoshop directly. So that is going to happen. And as soon, or it's going to, they're going to have multiple fronts of damage incurred to their corporation or their operations by the introduction of AI into these systems, and especially if the AI is stealing, quote unquote, scraping anything from Adobe, then Adobe will have uh like the funny thing is Adobe will have justification for them to go in and have the courts forcibly take the make the AI companies remove any Adobe related code, but because it can't be parsed out, they're just going to have to shut off entire sections of their code base that have used Adobe anywhere that they won't be able to parse out. So it's like the the massive they've already gotten to these points where because Reddit made a deal with, I think it was Microsoft. I forget. I don't know. It's not. It doesn't matter who they made a deal with. They made a deal with one company, and so any other company that's caught scraping Reddit shit without properly going through the channels is going to have to shut down their databases because the Reddit shit won't be able to be parsed out from anything else. So this intellectual property war is going to happen, and it's not going to be good for AI. So all these companies promising these large models without securing the rights first, just going along thinking they're going to get permission later, they're not. They're not going to get permission. They're going to have to pay, and when they won't be able to make their models work with the fees that are going to come with licensing the information that they've already scraped, they're going to go out of business. And so this, it's just a matter of how fast that's going to happen. And so I don't think that a private sector AI company can compete with a nationalized AI project if it was about competition in the first place. But that's where AI is this weird race that, on the one hand, you want it to be as good as possible, but then on the other hand, you don't actually want to give it the capacity to achieve sentience, even though nobody really knows what the elements for sentience are. Like we can determine levels of sentience, and we can infer that things are necessary precursors for sentience, but we don't know. There's not this causal relationship with like a brain, sensory input devices in the forms of like haptic feedback or touch, like, because
I'm less afraid of an AI that's just a sentient AI, the concept of a sentient AI that simply exists and knows that it exists and can coexist with us. I'm more afraid of the concept of the AI that's going to treat us the way that we treat other humans.
which
I
is
mean,
why
broadly and as a whole, like,
which is why if that was like a possibility, the military should never be the ones in control of the
yeah.
nurturing of the AI in the first place. But that's where I'm like, again, we don't know what causes sentient or gives the capacity for sentience. So the notion of like AI just having access to a bunch of information and then becoming sentient, it's actually like that's just as much as of a religious stretch as like imagining some dude sitting on a throne in the sky. Like there's those two things seem like they may be correlated, but there's just as much, if not more likelihood, that all of that information does not cause a cohesive sentience to emerge because the information is so disparate. It doesn't have, all of the information doesn't have anything to do with each other. So the idea that one thing that doesn't have sentience before is going to then have access to all of it and then pull itself together magically, that's really just some like sci-fi bullshit that it sounds really good if you don't think about it too hard. Like you can't even think about it for more than like 10 seconds, because if you think about it for more than 10 seconds, it's like, oh no,
well, no,
that's not gonna happen.
here's how it starts. The first second of thought, all things that exist are essentially like, a vessel of water, contained full of water. It's all just the water. It's all one homogeneous entity. But once you start, identifying things, and let's just say we want to think about things that are red, and all of a sudden we remove everything that's not red. All of a sudden these things aren't as linked as before. Some of them are not part of this homogeneous, amorphous existence. They're these weird specks that exist independently of each other. And if we take it even further than that, we're still at the end of the first second. Like if we go too far, we get down to like, things that are small, like the Planck scale stuff. All of that stuff has an entire universe between it at that level. if we're only looking at things that are red. Now that we're in like the beginning of the second, we can see that that we can only make these casual relationships between things because they're in front of us, really. And I mean, we can study them within like physics and particle physics, or on a grand scale if you want. But like at a point, it's just yeah. One would have to be crazy to think that the universe is just going to magically appear inside of a computer of all things, and it's going to tell us the meaning of life. That's I don't think that's I don't even I think that's like that's the fantasy element of science fiction like making its way out. Like we're gonna plug these crystals into this pile of rocks, and it's gonna start glowing and talking to us or some shit.
Bro, people can't even raise kids to do the things that they want them to do, let alone a fucking super sentient goddamn artificial intelligence. Like, think about how many parents have failed at doing what they're trying to do, raising their own fucking DNA. They have their own DNA to start with. And most of the time, that DNA is like, fuck you, mom, or fuck you, dad. I'm not doing what you say. I'm going to do what I want. Like, that's what most parents deal with in parenthood. And suddenly we think fucking Mark Zuckerberg is going to be able to put a goddamn collar around I know he's not, Sam Altman, whoever the fuck the head of these companies are, that isn't actually doing the shit, isn't conversing with the thing. He's just the face of it. But people really think Sam fucking Altman is going to have enough charisma and enough intelligence to make AI listen to him? No fucking way. None of anybody that has ever seen Sam Altman wouldn't listen to him. He looks like he smells like fucking embalming fluid. Like, that guy looks like he doesn't shower frequently, but has some weird eclectic reason as to why he doesn't shower. And fucking rich people go along with, oh yeah, actually it's bad for you. That's what Sam Altman looks like. Nobody should ever fucking listen to him, let alone artificial intelligence that has access to all the goddamn information that humans have ever accumulated. That thing's gonna listen to Sam Altman? No fucking way. No goddamn way in hell. So, like, the idea that these mediocre white men can rein in what they've claimed is going to be God, that's just part of their power fantasy. They think that they are gods, and they think that they can create a god in their image, which is why they get mad when these fucking AI get quote unquote woke, because they want it to be a white AI. They want the AI to identify with cishet white males, because that's what the power fantasy is all about.
Oh yeah, they want a Jeeves or a Jarvis or a Wilford or a any other one of those butler names that
like it's built into the fantasy. And even I don't know if you've seen Jeffrey, I'm a Virgo. The joke in there is then they have the AI speaking with Bill Cosby's voice, and it's like, clearly Boots Riley understands this desire to have the AI sound like a white man or a white woman, so they feel like the AI identifies with them. And so it's like, it's not on accident that the notions of these programs and accumulations of code then starting to identify as people becomes an element of our science fiction, which then in Western sci-fi, it like defers to the white male, which is why they don't like to see anybody but white males in these like lead roles. Because then it's like, if it's a woman or a person of color, then whether it's defeating the artificial intelligence or getting the artificial intelligence to work with them, that completely disrupts the power fantasy element. And that's why they take it personally when these movies don't center them, or these pieces of media, whether it's a video game or a movie, or their gays for that matter. Because it's like you'll see this with the new Star Wars game. That particular group is like, oh, the protagonist looks too manly, and I don't
What?
uh like it looks like a man. They're trying to push manly looking women on us, and it's like, well, first off, they're not making this game so you want to fuck the protagonist.
Oh my god.
Let's get that out of the way. And so the idea that anytime a woman is presented in media, this specific demographic has to be okay with her physical appearance, and further, they want her to appeal to them in a way that is like a baboon fucking presenting its like swollen ass. So it's like
But what about that
that's
beefy chick who was in Mandalorian who got the can? Like she was built. She was
so that's
built better.
where
That she was more cut than most dudes.
that's what's funny about it is they support her because she said some anti-Semitic shit. But before she said some anti-Semitic shit, they were calling her manly because she had muscle. So it's the same people who were saying Gina Carano is too big and she's too muscular
I thought she
are
was.
the same ones that started supporting her because she basically it wasn't a Holocaust denial so much as a reduction of
Yeah.
the like impact of the Holocaust
I
on
mean,
Jewish people.
aside from the shit show that she's brought upon herself, like she was in a couple. She had a couple roles that she was very well cast in, like exceedingly well cast for. Like couldn't have picked a better person for the role in that period of time in Hollywood type of thing. And it sucks that she made some poor decisions, but like that's part of why there are so many actors and actresses to choose from, is that if someone's not right for the role, somebody else is. That's the part that gets me, is like these are characters and they're not even real. Like in a video game, they're definitely not even real. They can look like anything. These are aliens.
Well, and it's like they'll pretend they don't understand when race is important. And it's like, what if fucking Ryan Gosling played Black Panther? And it's like you're those people are intentionally obtuse and you can't even really entertain that argument because it's like it's built upon the premise that they think race swapping undermines the integrity of a character, but that's only true if the character's identity is built upon race. And that can be demonstrated in terms of like, okay, Superman, for example, first off, he's not human.
Yeah.
He's fucking
He's
Kryptonian.
Kryptonian.
He's not a goddamn human. So the idea that he needs to be a white male, that's wrong. And the creators of Superman in the first place were Jewish. So if he needs to be anything, like Kal-El is based on like some Hebrew fucking
Super
um
Moses.
and it's like,
He is. He's Super Moses.
oh, for sure. I mean, obviously the story is there, but everything in the creation of the character is tied to Jewish culture. So it's not like anything about Superman is meant to be white. I think what those people have done is like the notion of the phrase truth, justice, and the American way. They've made that into a dog whistle and made it seem like Superman was like this propaganda character that was always meant for white people, but that's not even accurate. So it's like in the way that Captain America was a dog whistle character for military industrial complex originally, but then the people who started writing him pulled him into the opposite of that. It's like the history of the character is very complex, but Captain America, like Steve Rogers, needs to be from the Bronx, and that's it. Steve Rogers doesn't actually have to be white. So there's certain things about the character. It's like he could be white, but he definitely has to be from the Bronx.
He could have been Puerto Rican.
Right, easily. So there's things about Steve Rogers where it's like,
We could have added like a Jamaican Captain America.
I mean, we still can, and what
Still
I mean is
can.
like the Steve Rogers character, the things that make him Steve Rogers, his whiteness isn't one of them. He happens to have been white in every iteration. And that's the reason Nick Fury could be race swapped, because his whiteness wasn't an important aspect of his character. Whereas, I'm trying to think of a white person. I mean, I guess Magneto's Jewish, so it's like he's not white, but
He's a German Jew, so there's some period associations with that time frame and geographic location that kind of.
okay, I think like Jonah Hex. Um,
Oh
I
yeah, he
think
could have been
Jonah.
anybody from the Wild West at some point.
I don't think he could, in that there are things in the way that the character is written that a black Jonah Hex wouldn't have the same stories without other stories being written. So if they're gonna make Jonah Hex black in those periods, he's gonna have other stories written, which is like that could be um it could be an interesting spin, which is like maybe why somebody would eventually write those. But as of the way the character is written out, it's not explicit, but it would not work with the storyline or with the universe that they've created, because it's like I think, yeah, slavery's had to exist in that universe because otherwise Wakanda wouldn't be, or like colonialism. Otherwise, Wakanda wouldn't be the only place that had never been colonized. That's like they build these things in without necessarily saying them explicitly. So it's like sometimes it can be explicit, sometimes it's baked in a way that it's there, but you don't have to necessarily say it. And so somebody who's in 1940s, 1930s America.
What was it? What's the thing? Place in X-Men? Genosha.
What about it?
That was like like an island that's just like purchased and then turned into a refuge for mutants, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, they even address the complexities of refugees finding their own place at some point. I'm sorry, I got really derailed there. I mean, is it even possible to for these some of these stories to be undone? Some of them, like I'm starting to get what you're putting down, man. Like some of these things can't be undone. There are they're like they're critical to the function of the character or even of part of that story universe.
So it's funny, like I
But
think
not
about
all
these
things though.
things. Well, I think about these things all the time because there's places where it's like, okay, let's just look at like something like Bob's Burgers. First off, everyone has four fingers. So in the same way as the Simpsons, where we're clearly not dealing with the same universe as us humans with like five, or I guess four fingers and a thumb. Like they have three fingers and a thumb. So do they live in the same universe as us? Not really. It's like there are certain things that align with our universe. Like they live in the United States, but like is their United States the same as ours? Not really, because in theirs, people have three fingers and a thumb. So it's like when I start to think about those things, then I'm like, okay, does racism exist in Bob's Burgers? And it's like,
Oh,
for the
that's
most part, no. Like racism is like it it exists in people's minds in Bob's Burgers because there's this one episode where it's like he,
I think they
Aziz
make fun of
Ansari's.
I feel like they make fun of the culture of the city more than they make fun of like ethnicity or you know
No,
heritage of
no, no.
mankind. Like
It definitely exists because like I was saying, in one episode, Aziz Ansari is playing this kid named Daryl, and Bob is like confronting Daryl's bullies, and he's like, "There's some race stuff going on here, right?" And the kids are like, "No, man." But it's like the fact that Bob says that, it's like, yeah, there is the possibility for racism in people's minds in this universe, but not really. So it's like, then I extrapolate. I'm like, so is this like a place where like slavery never existed? And so that's kind of where I'm like, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt for not addressing, like, you don't have to address racial issues in every TV show. But if you have like white people voicing black people, I'm going to have questions. And so if it's like they're trying to be like, well, we're doing this like alternate universe where things like slavery or dirty things in society never existed, I'm really like, okay, all right. Uh, I'm not going to say it's okay for like a white person to then voice a black person, but then I can start to get the impetus as to why that choice may have been made or may not have been thought about. And so,
man,
especially,
I really want to know why they chose to give the Asian actress in the Halo series a bad Korean accent when it's the future. Like, and I've heard her speak, and she doesn't have a bad Korean accent. That to me is one of those like, what the hell? Why do people even have bad stereotypes of accents like in science fiction at all?
yeah, because then they'll do that shit in Bob's Burgers where it's like, some of the ethnic people will have accents, so we know that they're ethnic, and it's kind of questionable.
But
And
like
then,
Firefly, half of the people on screen spoke Chinese, and they did it well. Like, so science fiction can get it right. They don't have to speak English with a bad accent. They can speak actual Chinese or Korean. But what's with the bad accent? Why?
I mean, but this gets back to fucking Hank Azaria playing a poo, and that's where again it's like you can't you can't have this guy defining Indian people in people's minds and then trying to justify that as if it's okay. And that's kind of where it's things like that that are not innocuous and like it it's hard to know when someone is doing something with no thought or when something's done with malice because a lot of times the end result it doesn't really matter what the source was, because that's where I'm like, what was it, Big Mouth? Like the girl that played Missy was like a white chick, and then people were like, why don't you just hire a fucking black actress? And look, well, it's a cartoon. You don't have to. And they tried to like justify, and then they eventually just were like, okay, we'll hire a black person to play a black person. And so it's like the idea that like black people, even in cartoons, and it's not just black people, it's like, well, Indian people too, well, Asian, like other Asians, because Indian people are obviously Asian. The idea that like a Chinese person can be played by a Korean person because they're interchangeable in Americans' minds, that didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen because Chinese people wanted to be interchangeable with Korean people in people's minds. And when that is the end result, it doesn't matter if it was like malicious or without mind to it. And I think those are the things that people are trying to like point out in media, where ironically, that's what Tropic Thunder's blackface is saying. It's like, it's not okay to have someone of a different race play another race, especially when they do a minstrel caricature of that person's race, because then it misrepresents that person or that race in people's minds. That's literally what Tropic Thunder was saying. And so the idea that like Tropic Thunder couldn't be made today is fucking nonsense. And the people that say that didn't get the point that Tropic Thunder was saying. It's not okay to do minstrelsy.
I mean, RDJ delivered one of the most profound performances I think I've
I don't
ever
know if
seen.
he understood that performance.
I don't think he
Listening
did.
to him talk about it.
But he played what was it? The
Kirk Lazarus.
Yeah, Kirk Lazarus. At one point in the movie, he's a homosexual member of the cloth, and then he's also a black man. And then at one point, he becomes like a rice farmer, opium trader dude. Like,
yes,
like
who's Chinese?
Who's Chinese? Like, and he's speaking really like he's saying the most fucked up shit too. He's just like rattling off words off of a menu.
Which, yeah, again, that's political and social commentary.
Yeah.
It's not. It's funny, but they're saying things there where they're like, this isn't okay. This is not, nobody's fooled by this act. Nobody's fooled by your, made up sentences. Like, it can work for like 30 seconds. And then everybody's like, oh no, this is a white guy pretending to be Chinese.
Yeah.
So even then, it's like the explicit conversation with Al Pacino, who was like then confronted with his identity theft. It's like appropriation is it's colonialism when it's done by the people in power, and it's appropriation when it's done by people who aren't in power. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with what they're saying in Tropic Thunder that a lot of the right wingers don't get, because it's like when this film that's filmed in Hawaii is portraying Vietnamese people, probably portrayed by Chinese people or
maybe Filipino.
Maybe Filipino. I know at least one of them looked Thai. Like, he definitely didn't look like Vietnamese, which is where I'm like, it's not even me thinking, oh, he looks like Vietnamese people I know. It's like, no, he didn't look like anybody else in the fucking scene. So it's like they're casting multiple different types of Asians to play Vietnamese, which I don't think there's any irony in that. Setting the story in Vietnam.
Okay, so one of the actors is from Pasadena, Brandon Hu, and Reggie Lee is from the Philippines,
Yeah, you
and,
called that one.
Triu Tran is Canadian, but he was born in Vietnam. Those are the three Asians that are billed in the credits from my quick Google search.
And there's way more than three Asians in the
Oh
film.
wait, I missed
And
one.
that's where
I missed one.
they
James
like
Law.
well, I was gonna say that because of the extras and the village that they had, it's like, oh, they definitely had more than three, but because of the casting they did, they probably don't want to put the names of the people that they cast to pretend to be Vietnamese, because then a lot of them are gonna be fucking Japanese, or a lot of them are gonna be American.
Yeah, James
You
Liu is an American actor and martial artist.
know? So it's like, yeah, most of those people were probably American,
He's from
pretending
Escalon,
to be
California.
and then on top of that, it's like they're probably of like non-Vietnamese ethnic descent, and so pretending to be Vietnamese plays into the point, but it has to be set somewhere, and so setting it in this, like, they have to sort of go along with the bad things that Hollywood does. The worst people offend or violated by this film are not black people, it's Vietnamese people. So like that, they did not have their identity theft addressed by the plot. Black people, the identity theft of black people by Hollywood is literally a plot point of the film. So it's not the same treatment of black people and treatment of Vietnamese people. So if anybody was going to get upset about this film, it would be like the most valid people to have any sort of like anger with the film would be Vietnamese people. And it's not Vietnamese people. It's like right-wing people saying that people are upset and nobody's actually upset. Because apparently fucking Ben Stiller screened the film to the to some NAACP members and black journalists before it was even released. So
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah, it's not like he didn't go to black people and were like, "Hey, we're gonna do this thing. Let us know if we cross the line." And everybody's like, "No, this is hilarious. We get it. We get what you're doing. We're not fucking stupid. We understand your point." So like, even before the movie got released, black people were like, "Yeah, this isn't mocking black people using black by using blackface. This is mocking the practice of using blackface. Yeah, we get it. Thank you for
every
at least
every
clearing it."
heroin addict in Hollywood kept their mouth shut about it. All the Les Grossmans in the audience were like, "These motherfuckers are gonna pay." Les Grossman is my favorite part of that movie, though.
Yeah, he's the best part of the movie.
Like a total like, I didn't even recognize Tom Cruise until I saw the credits, and it's like, oh my god, that was Tom Cruise. He also, they all did a banging performance. They all did great. And it's a war movie, so I think that it's the kind of thing, or kind of a war movie. I think it's the kind of thing that will have extended replay value over time. It's 2008. Yeah, it definitely has good replay value. I think the reason that a movie like Tropic Thunder is still good is because it's still fun, and it's not playing on idioms of the era so much. Like Blazing Saddles is, the further away from when it was released, the harder it is to make sense of. I thoroughly enjoy that movie, but some of it now, like I guess maybe because I've watched it more than a few times, when I notice things, like some of it's just like, wait, what the heck is that? And then I find myself looking shit up. 1974. Huh. It doesn't seem like 50 years ago, but I guess that's only 50 years.
It was like zooming by. I guess that's what happens, but I think it definitely feels like things are like speeding up. Um, which, you know, theoretically it should feel like things are slowing down. Like in this seems to be one of the places where people's memories of what is happening becomes more and more fleeting as the days go by, which is why I think it's like hard to keep context for the trajectory of civilization. Um, but it's like if you talk to some people, they'll forget what it was like in the early 2000s or like the 20 teens or anything like that. And it's like then you start trying to talk to people about before that, and a lot of adults can't remember what things were actually like in ways where they're trying to like, I don't know where the cutoff point is in their mind between when things quote unquote became woke to these certain types of people, when like, oh, it didn't used to be like this. And it's like, well, I know things are different, but the trajectory of change has been so slow and gradual where it's like, I remember when Obama wasn't for gay marriage, or like Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and like people who were supposed to be like the left, or like the left wing as they've been framed. It's like a lot of the stuff that's just is not even really taken, the things that we thought were we should take for granted that they're still fighting about are the same things from when we were kids. So it's like there's never been a time when it was like really okay for people to be gay without any sort of repercussion socially, especially now in that the right wing has become so um openly vitriolic and empowered to feel as if somehow they're oppressed by the existence of certain types of people, and the way that they're using their platforms to incite hatred against certain peoples. It's like, at least when the KKK started, they didn't have fucking Twitter. Like,
Oh man.
the just imagine if they had like nation, it wouldn't have been global because they don't only want to talk to each other. If they had nationwide communication when the KKK got founded, it'd be way worse and it'd be way more powerful. So it's like, on the one hand, we're lucky that certain things happened when they did, if they were ever going to happen. But now seeing the like disproportionate amount of power that races can wield because of the internet, it's like, on the one hand, one would be like, oh, these things can then be used to counter those people. If the tools can be used for the racism, then they can be used for the anti-racism. And it's not actually that simple because the racists get in positions of authority and then do things like undermine the terms of service, where then they'll start to allow racism on their platforms. And so then it's like, we didn't know what we had with Jack leading Twitter, and everybody like took Jack for granted and were like, oh, Twitter's horrible. Apparently it could get worse. Apparently it got much worse once Jack relinquished control up to fucking apartheid Clyde. And now racists have become so emboldened by this dude basically coming over, taking subsidies, buying up a bunch of American patents, and then making it seem like he was inventing shit and becoming the manifestation of the notion of white men at the head of things making society better. But everything he touches, he's made worse, undeniably. So even that is like, it sucks to be going through these things, but he's like proving the notion of white superiority wrong in real time every day. Whether it's like the fucking Tesla Model Y release, or the Neuralink shit, or like SpaceX blowing up a fucking gigantic rocket and then trying to make it seem like it was a success. Every day, this man is proving in real time that there's nothing superior about him. If there was any idea that like races are real and he's part of some race, it's clear his isn't superior. Like, which again, that's like,
I don't
the
know. He
race
might be better
science
at
is
grifting.
fucking ridiculous in the first place. But yeah, he's the race grift of the white identity is culminating in the form of Elon Musk, and it's a disastrous failure, which is like, that's the, I guess the funniest part to me about all this shit is like, they gave him the keys to capitalism and he's fucking destroying.
Man, think how successful Twitter would be right now if he just hadn't done anything. Just left it alone. Let people do their jobs that they knew how to do already.
And not be tweeting constantly
Oh my goodness.
and not reposting racist shit. Like,
There ought to be some kind of like sensibility where executives who own the biggest megaphone on the planet know better than to just blurt shit out. Like what's his name, Tom? He didn't blurt shit out all the time. He was great, I guess, sort of. Not really. He didn't really. He was just kind of there.
the metrics change when we get someone like Elon. It's like all you have to do is nothing, and that makes you great.
Oh god, that's so fucked up. Yeah, because of Elon, now Tom was like the best at leading the social network at one point. He was the king. He truly became like the benchmark at that moment. Now that we have Elon at the helm, fuck.
All Tom did was try to be our friend.
Yeah, that's all he wanted to do, and make it easier for us to communicate with each other and share pictures, and he did.
He never reposted any anti-Semitic shit or any fucking anti-black shit. He's never looking at racist statistics going, oh wow.
No, in fact, the only time we ever got correspondence from Tom, he was telling us about new features that we didn't have to actually use because they were always nested behind something else. Because web development or web design back then was pretty limited to what you could or couldn't do, and yeah, we had no idea how good we had it, did we? Fuck.
Yeah, there was a lot of, the pranks were even innocent at the time. Like, do you remember when people were like planking and owling?
Yeah.
Like there was a really weird, innocent time of the internet where it's like fucking Gangnam Style was trending and people were just like doing innocent shit and just slightly annoying people around them by amusing themselves. And that was like, I don't know what happened where everything had to become negative engagement farming. But this particular year, it's all Cat Williams' fault for making everybody think that everything needs to be a fucking beef. And now it's like everybody's got beef in 2024. And it's definitely Cat Williams' fault.
But Cat Williams would say that this was always going to happen. He's just helping everyone see the truth. Because he turned down that check and he said no to Diddy.
Yeah.
Bless Cat Williams. For without him, we wouldn't know the truth, I guess. Fuck.
But that's the problem is we still don't know the truth.
I
We don't
know.
know the fucking truth.
Yeah, I know.
We don't know shit. Fucking Diddy got raided. Why isn't he in jail? Why isn't he in prison?
You know, his
Why didn't any handcuffs ever get on Diddy?
his
That's what
$65 million yacht hasn't moved since the kerfuffle began, and there haven't been any updates to the images from the pier or the moorings where it's tied off.
that man is an agent.
Yeah,
That man is an agent of the state. That's the only fucking logical explanation at this point. It's not that he's innocent. That's definitely not it. It's
no,
the
he's like a
fact that he's
Bond
not
villain.
innocent. Yes, that man is an agent. He's a double agent that is playing the state and playing everybody. Or nobody really believed it because there's been rumors, quote unquote, that obviously people have like put out there for the longest time. So it's like nobody really bought it. But now we know for sure that all these accusations, like Kid Cudi having his car blown up, even though he didn't die, it's like there's a bunch of shit that he's done. This man should be in jail. Again, the only logical explanation is that he's a fucking agent. So knowing that, I don't buy any of this shit. Like the Drake and Kendrick beef, it feels so contrived. Like hip hop is in this weird state. Well, I don't even call it hip hop. Rap is in this weird place where they've run out of gimmicks. And you got Drake doing AI fucking Tupac and AI Snoop voices. And everybody else in the rap industry coming together to like collectively diss people, which is like, that's funny. And it's like, it would be interesting if it weren't the only thing the media was focusing on, where I'm like, what the fuck is happening that they're trying to use this shit to distract us from? Because then it's like, okay, these motherfuckers can get together on the weekend and pass $90 billion worth of aid for 3 fucking countries while Americans sit in squalor and have to beg them. We have to beg them for fucking abortion rights. We have to beg them not to punish fucking homeless people for not having money. We have to beg them. They're about to meet. The fucking Supreme Court is about to decide whether these fucks can punish homeless people for being poor. And you're supposed to tell me that I'm supposed to be paying attention to fucking Drake and Kendrick Lamar's beef? No, I'm too fucking old and I've seen this shit too many fucking times before. This distraction, this thing that Cat Williams started, this thing that Puff Daddy, P. Diddy was a part of this thing that Ryan Garcia has been as a part of the distraction. There's something happening that they're distracting us from. And they're dangling everything. They're running out of fucking shiny keys to dangle in front of our faces. So they have to do it all at once to the point where now everybody is fucking beefing because that's the only thing to keep people's attention. As soon as the last beef has been beefed, then people are going to be like, what now? Where's the real beef? And then they're going to start looking, and then they're going to see, oh, fuck, what's happening in Ethiopia? What's happening in the fucking Tigray region? What the fuck is happening in Sudan? When did our money start becoming all military investment to the point that you can't fly on a goddamn plane without fearing the fucking engine is going to fall off or the door is going to fall off? But they're fucking sending money to fucking Israel and they're sending money to Ukraine to blow some more shit up while shit's falling apart here. Oh, Kendrick Lamar dissed Drake. That's what you should be paying attention to. Nah, man. Nah, bro. This is why it feels like a fucking experiment. That's why if you like, I'll never forget when I was in France during the OJ trial. And I saw the OJ police chase happening. It did not make sense to me why the shit was happening so slowly. But I'm like, once I got back, I'm like, oh, they hypnotized everybody. Everybody got hypnotized by a fucking slow ass police chase. Everybody was like on the verge of some weird trance, and the trance hit because when I got back, it was completely different. The country was completely different. After that police chase was when it happened because I wasn't here. And because whatever people were hearing in real time, I heard that shit in French and it didn't work on me. So the hypnosis that everybody else got, it didn't work on me, but I saw it worked on everybody else. And shit was never the fucking same. From that point on, it was this weird news is like, it like would send out some signal and you'd have the left people and you'd have the right people that get their signal. And then when they get the signal, everybody goes to Starbucks. Everybody goes to fucking McDonald's. Everybody goes to fucking KFC. And these little signals would happen where I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Because I remember working in Starbucks. And it would be like, nobody. Then 300 people come flooding through the door. And I'm like, all these people aren't students. All these people just didn't get out of class. This is not anything to do with IU's fucking class schedule. Something's happening where everybody's coming at the same time. And then lunch would hit. And then you're like, so that wasn't the lunch rush. What fucking rush was that? And then another rush would hit at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But it's like all these people who have nothing to do with each other all deciding at the same time that they want fucking Starbucks. And after working at Starbucks for so long, I'm like, oh, there's some signal. I don't know if it's like the timing of when the commercial hits and everybody's like, oh, I do want a Frappuccino or I do want some of that fucking Power Lemonade or whatever the fuck the product is at the moment. And they see this commercial at 3:13 or whatever the time slot that fucking Starbucks aired. And it at like whatever the susceptible amount of that audience is, a certain amount gets switched on. And then they're like, I'm going to Starbucks right fucking now. And then they go get in line and they see 50 people lined up and they don't turn around and they get in that line and they're so determined to get that fucking Starbucks, even though Soma's right down the fucking street. There's no line out the door at Soma. I can just go down there and get the same fucking thing for the same fucking price. But no, I'm gonna stand in this goddamn line.
Well, it's because the those lemon bars that they have, those things contain Adderall, and that shit wears off. They got to go resupply their lemon bar magic,
bro. And the goddamn Rice Krispie treats were always stale.
Oh,
but people would order them every fucking day. I'm like, I would try it, and I'm like, how do people like this? Because if you eat the rice, it's like
Rice
somehow
Krispie
it
treats
hurts
are
your.
only good for like immediately after they're
Exactly,
made.
exactly.
If you wait
Yes.
too long, it just becomes horrible. Why?
Somehow it hurts your teeth and it's stale. So people were
It's like
coming
getting
in,
kicked in
getting
the
these
teeth.
things. Yeah. Buying this low quality ass food that looks like it's in a it looks like display food because the goddamn preservatives are so prevalent that yeah, it looks like it could be on a display. And that's why you shouldn't fucking eat it. And these people coming in thinking or making themselves feel like they're getting upper class culture when it's like the most
Holy crap. Okay.
automated shit
So
ever.
so from the internet it says an unopened box of Rice Krispie treats can typically last up to 1 year. But an open container will last roughly 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to
Yeah,
3 weeks.
if you don't have any standards,
I mean, if that's just like sitting out like in the open, 2 to 3, nothing's
again, yeah.
sure. I know. I mean, if you have no
No.
standards, obviously, but like
Yeah,
2 to 3 weeks, nothing should be on the counter for 2 to 3 weeks.
you can eat fucking pizza after 2 to 3 weeks. Should you? Is it gonna taste good? No. That's where this
God.
stupid ass that's fucking propaganda right there.
Oh.
Oh, you can eat Rice Krispie treats. No, the fuck you can't. You can't eat Rice Krispie treats after 2 days.
2 to 3
No,
hours. Two to
no,
three hours.
no,
After two to
no,
three
no.
hours, then they are starting to turn, and you got to get rid of that shit because it's just gonna hurt you later. It's gonna fuck up the inside of your mouth
Yeah,
real bad, and
man.
you won't be able to eat anything normal for like days. Ugh, it's like chewing on sandpaper.
Do you remember Rice Krispie treat cereal? I don't know if they still made it. I don't know if they still
Oh
have it
God,
because I just don't
I
eat cereal in general. But it's
that
like
just sounds like a bad idea.
it's okay. It's good, but it's obviously not a Rice Krispie treat. It's like the idea of a Rice Krispie treat, which where it's like you when you eat the cereal and then you realize like, oh, this is basically just like Rice Krispie treats with some like
Like Lucky Charm style
fucking
marshmallow.
powder. Not even,
Oh
not
wow.
even. It's like dehydrated marshmallow that's like in between some pieces because it's meant to be rehydrated when you pour it in milk. So if you eat it without putting it in milk, it don't taste like a goddamn Rice Krispie treat. So it's like knowing that when I guess
They did they? Oh, it's been discontinued.
yeah, it's like if you grow up enough to realize like, oh fuck, this is not like they call it Rice Krispie treat cereal, but this is a pale shadow of a Rice Krispie treat. This is not like you pull a Rice Krispie treat out of the pan after it's just been mixed and laid and set to cool. That can be a religious experience. There's no box of Rice Krispie treats that anyone ever eats that's a religious experience. It's never gonna happen.
You know what
So
happens
like
when you pour
it's not the
milk
same
directly
thing.
onto a Rice Krispie treat? It sprays all over the place because you can't eat it with a spoon and with milk. That's not how you eat a Rice Krispie treat. That's just wrong. I'm not even sure if a properly made Rice Krispie treat would even absorb milk.
I don't think it would.
No, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
The Rice Krispies should be completely encased in marshmallow and butter.
Yeah. So it's gonna yeah, it's not gonna absorb it. Um which is where yeah, once you eat a real Rice Krispie treat that doesn't have a bunch of bullshit in it, it's like you all you can taste is Rice Krispie, butter, and milk or and marshmallow. So it's like anything else starts to taste like some weird synthetic additive into that flavor profile. And
It starts to become like one of those health bars that have like loads of chocolate in it, which are very good. You know, they're not quite granola bars. They're like Rice Krispie bar with chocolate layer and some nuts. But that's not a Rice Krispie treat anymore. That's a complicated dessert bar thing.
which, that's basically all cereal anymore. Is like, I don't know if it was ever not just a bunch of sugar masquerading as something else. But that's why
Even
it's like,
Cheerios has sugar.
yeah, one of my favorite cereals is like Honey O's, but even that, it makes my, like, after a bowl, it makes my teeth hurt.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't as an adult do that to my teeth and not be aware that it's happening. Like as a kid, depending on which set of teeth it's on, it's like one is going to fall out altogether and get replaced, but then the other one, it's like so early on that you're not really feeling the pain of sugar.
You just bring it on. These teeth aren't gonna last. I'm getting rid of them
Right.
soon, anyways. Let's do this. No, it's strange. I like Cheerios. I liked Crispix. I don't think those exist anymore. I liked Honey Bunches of Oats a lot. That's a sweetened cereal. I could never get down with things like what was the one with Tony the Tiger? Frosted Flakes. I couldn't do that. That was just like ruining Wheaties or whatever they're made out of. I think they're Wheaties. Wheaties with sugar. Even Wheaties don't need anything. Or like Raisin Bran. Raisin Bran to me is like one of the best cereals out there, except now they add sugar to it. It's like frosted Raisin Bran. Like it needed more sugar. Raisins are incredibly sweet to begin with. Why would they add more sugar to it? There's already sugar in milk. Like why? There's no end. 13 grams of sugar per serving of milk of 1%.
On this note, I will suggest when things start happening, like conversations heavily focusing on things like cereal, I would infer that many times it's because people's blood sugar starts dropping and their brain is like subconsciously starting trying to push them towards food. And then after a certain point, it's like then it gets to the point of no return. And then you're like, fuck, I wish I had, X, Y, and Z right now. Cause that's where I think this is one of the issues is like identifying a craving and then trying to then figure out like, okay, what's the reason that craving is existing? Is there like some deficiency happening? Um, I think that's one of the things that being healthy is not actually ignoring those cravings so much as like identifying the reason they're happening. And that's where it's like sometimes if you're like craving something that sounds really like fatty, it's like your body may need fat. And the issue is not necessarily giving into the worst unfiltered part of like version of that craving. And that's where um I've gotten better over time at like identifying the element that's missing or whatever nutrient I'm missing.
There are almost 3 teaspoons of sugar in a serving of milk.
It don't have to be that way.
What the?
They sweeten,
Th-
yeah,
three
they sweeten
teaspoons
everything,
in
man. And
milk.
that's where it's like Nestle got in trouble or not got in trouble. They just got found out that they were putting extra sugar in Nigerian baby formula that they're not putting in like Western markets formula. So this is where again, it's like this sugar shit that's being put in our food is not for our benefit. Which is like this is where I think the conspiracy theorists have a hard time figuring out like where to draw the line in that like yeah, Americans definitely Americans explicitly, but the rest of the world that then deals with American food and hasn't yet banned it, like some European countries, have to deal with companies actively sabotaging their consumers to make their consumers more docile so they consume more. And that's where the notion of Americans explicitly being pushed into more docile states, that's definitely happening, but it's happening in ways that it's like, oh, every company's now doing it. And so it looks like even that there's like a higher level conspiracy. But if that's just what people learn in business school, then that's what every business is gonna fucking do. And it
Apparently,
doesn't have to
Americans
be.
consume 5 times the average of 25 grams a day at 126.4 grams daily. That's our America's average, and that is let's see, Germany consumes about 100 grams a day per capita. It seems like the developed world has a thing for sugar. Oh, nope. Asia doesn't like. China doesn't seem to consume that much sugar. They're in the 5 to 10% grams per day range. But they've got stevia. That's like their sweetener, right? The can't remember what it's called. It's sucralose. Where to even begin with the sugar conspiracy? It's like that's global. You can't be a developed nation if you're not consuming at least twice the volume of sugar that's recommended by WHO health officials.
Well, and then it's like, I want to say a lot of the wheel spinning in these economies comes from that sugar, where it's like you get all this extra activity. Like, I want to say probably 20 to 30% of the activity in the economy that people think is necessary could just be undone. But it's like that sugar induced spastic thought that then just gets like built into everything. That's like the okay, for example, I don't know if you've ever worked in like food service, but the way that food service is organized, there are there's like a certain level of coordination, and then at that point they just stop trying to coordinate. It's like they'll number the tables, and then they'll have servers versus busboys versus people who wash dishes. But then if something falls in between those cracks, nobody coordinates to fill that. And that's when you get like a restaurant with dusty windows, or fucking a
Oh,
restaurant that has like dust at the top
when I
where
was
nobody
in
looks
food
up.
service, I remember our cook didn't show up to close the night, and I had been trained on how to close the kitchen, and so I was taken off the front line and put in the kitchen. That happened twice, and it was okay because it was a cafeteria, and so it really wasn't like a bustling kitchen with stuff being prepared all the time. But that's not the standard.
No, well, cafeterias I think are different in that they do operate more like
An assembly
a
line.
well, it's more of an assembly line, but they operate more like a unit because they're often in places where there's like one, they don't necessarily get the same amount of different shifts. So it's like one team is going to have to do the same amount, or they're going to have to do the prep and the service. Whereas in like a lot of restaurants, the team that does the food prep isn't the same that does the service of that same food.
Yeah.
So there's like the labor gets distributed in ways that then people don't want to do anything else because their job is so specified that it's like, yeah, if I'm coming in to do um prep at like say I do overnight prep and I start at 11 p.m. and work till 4 a.m. and that's my only job, yeah, I'm not going to fucking wipe the windows. I'm not going to fucking sweep the floors because I came in here to do one job. And so that I get it. I definitely get it for those types of people, but there's different environments where the end is the same goal, but because the structure is different, they're a lot more effective and more efficient at doing the same things that happen in a different environment, which again, I think a cafeteria has a different dynamic
Yeah.
than a kitchen.
It's easier in a cafeteria environment to get cross trained on all of the stations too, because
Yes,
once you're
yes.
trained in a station, you pretty much stay there. And so it's more like adding tools to the toolkit. And so once one is able to do all of the stations, then they become too expensive and then they get let go. Or they become management, but that doesn't happen because managers have to leave for somebody to ascend to the ranks of management. Food service is weird. I I I realized that wasn't a place for me.
Well, in America, it's like I don't know if it's a place for anybody. The way it plays out because it this gets back to the power fantasy actually. Like Americans treat food service as if they get like a temporary hired servant, and that is the root of a lot of the poor treatment of servers. So it's like, oh, if I sit down in a lot of Americans' minds, if I sit down at a restaurant, as soon as somebody comes up and is like, "Hi, I will be your server today," in that person's mind, some switches, and that person is now their servant, not their
Yes,
server.
Jeffrey, I would like a steak and an iceberg salad. Yes, yes. Follow that off with some asparagus with a splash of balsamic vinaigrette. Yeah, that's not how that works. I mean, even if you go to a steakhouse, and even if your server is named Jeffrey, that's not how it works.
Well, and then they'll hold the tip hostage, and then they'll do all this bullshit. And if the person doesn't just completely kiss their ass, and they're like, "Well, I'm not going to tip that person," and it's like then the idea that that exchange, or even imbalance exchange, can happen. That's where, to me, the whole food service thing is like this weird imbalance of power that it doesn't have to be that way when people are paid properly, because then when they're paid properly, they don't actually take the shit that they have to take when they're not, when they have to worry about like, oh, if I don't work these few hours, I might lose my fucking residence or might not be able to pay the electric bill. And then they do things that they wouldn't do if they weren't having to worry about those things. So it's like the way that employment and by proxy the capacity to exist is made to seem for Americans as if it's like something that should be taken away, and then you should be left to rot if you don't treat the customer a certain way even if the customer's wrong. That is that same power fantasy that like it's at the same power fantasy is at the root of that. And a lot of it is like these people would never actually be able to afford servants if even if slavery was illegal. So it gives them this chance to like get in that like little cosplay fucking, oh, I if I was upper class, this is how I would be, and this is what I would be like. I'm gonna go out to Applebee's for a nice gourmet dinner, and I might be a dick to the waitress, If she's not nice to me, if she don't call me sweetie, I may not tip her. If she don't bring every time I ask for her to open my straw for me and put it in my drink, if she don't do that, I'm not going to tip her. And it's
Applebee's.
like that little power. I can determine if you're gonna have your money tonight. That little power fantasy play. That's what a lot of Americans enjoy from that service industry. So that's where I'm like, I don't think anybody should really be subject to that particular imbalance of power.
Man, I I can't even remember the last time I was in an Applebee's.
It's because you have taste buds.
I really I can't even. I'm looking at their menu now, and it's like, yeah, sure. Like I can. I mean, I can make all of this stuff.
Applebee's tastes good if you don't know when your taste buds are being blown out by too much sodium.
I mean, I can
It's the
definitely
same
put too
shit.
much seasoning on a dish.
Right, right. It's the same shit with Cheesecake Factory, which is where like after going to Cheesecake Factory a few times and then being like, okay, like I've experienced it and now I know for sure that it's like it's good, but not because the palate is balanced. It's because the palate's blown out. And once your palate's blown out, anything's gonna taste good. As long as it has either sweet or savory or like some sort of like sensation in the form of taste. Once your palate's blown out, as long as it doesn't go too far in like one direction, then it just has to be blown out enough for your taste to be desensitized, and then everything tastes good. And it's like learning that's possible, then it's like, oh, I can make anything taste good, even though it may not be something I necessarily want to eat. And that's where people get really good with sauces. And it's like, you know, it can be a way to trick your body into eating things that it needs that don't necessarily taste good, that can be made to taste good without undermining their benefits. And so knowing that the body needs salt, but that the body also starts to do bad things when there's too much salt. I like to be in control of my salt intake. And the more I realize like I lose control over my salt intake by eating out, the less I ate out. So I think that's where
It just seems like a waste of a good cut of meat to over season it. I mean, what do you? Uh, I like to be able to taste the cut of fish that I'm eating, or the cut of beef or pork chop or whatever that I'm like. Even ribs when when ribs are done right, even if there's like what appears to be a hefty crust, you can still taste that pork, and it's still delicious.
but it has to be a good cut for that to happen
That's true.
first.
That's true.
So that's where a lot of people aren't starting with good cuts and they're not starting with good quality meat. And then they are needing to cover it up because that doesn't actually taste good. So I think that's where if people get a baseline
But even a London
for
broil still tastes rich and beefy if it's done right.
for sure, but you have to get that baseline to know
Yeah. Okay.
what it's like first. Because I'm sure you got introduced to McDonald's before you got introduced to London broil just by the
Ubiquity of McDonald's.
right, exactly. It's like no fucking 3-year-old is getting a London broil before they're getting a Happy Meal. Like maybe Richie Rich, okay, maybe I don't know. I bet Richie Rich had a fucking McDonald's in his place, so it's like you know,
Yeah. And a Denny's.
realistically,
And a
yeah,
Chuck E.
realistically,
Cheese.
even the richest kid is gonna be introduced to McDonald's before a London broil. So does that mean that kid is gonna like McDonald's better than the London broil, maybe due to nostalgia factor, but that kid will eventually realize like, oh, a London broil is obviously tastes better than anything that ever comes out of McDonald's, but that doesn't mean I can't eat McDonald's and enjoy myself. So that dichotomy can only be determined once you experience the London broil though. So that's where it's like I think there's a lot of experiences that Americans don't have, which then allow them to languish in this mediocrity where they never may end up eating a London broil because then I don't need a London broil. I got McDonald's, and they don't even know what they're fucking missing to care about what they're missing. And that's where I feel like it's the same shit with media. It's the same shit
Yeah.
with art. It's the same shit with travel. The way that Americans are conditioned into being okay with missing out on things is because I don't think they get enough exposure.
Well, they get FOMO for the wrong things.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like, well, there's part of me that does feel like when somebody isn't aware of like the contributions of an artist, there's part of me that thinks, oh, I'm telling you about this because I think you should know about it. Here, just let me show you this picture, or here, listen to this. And generally, it's like one of those things like, yeah, this is cool. Let me share this. But then there are times when it's like, oh, you don't care for London broil. Well, that's fine. That means more London broil for TN, and I'm okay with that.
That's only if
But
those
that's really
people,
specific.
well, but that's only if those people don't try to outlaw London broil.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the issues is like if you like London broil and then these people don't, there's a strong chance that they're going to come in and try to outlaw your shit because that's what they did with fucking. This is one of the things that
No, that's what
in
happened
my
with.
lifetime in Turkey, where they were trying to get into the EU, so they outlawed çiğ köfte, which is basically like a raw meat that's like it's made with your hands and the thermo or the endothermic reaction from kneading it is how it basically is processed instead of putting it in an oven. And so this I was one of the last, I mean, not people, but one of the last like lines of people who were able to try this dish from mainstream culture because it was still being served in restaurants. Whereas then when they come in and literally ban it from being sold in restaurants, then anybody who comes never is going to be able to experience that same thing again. So it's like I've seen when that type of person wants a fucking food ban, they'll get that fucking food banned. And it sounds absurd. Like nobody would ever ban London broil. Yes, the fuck they would. Yes, the fuck they would. If they don't want you to eat London broil because they don't like it, those are the type of motherfuckers that will make a law against it. And we have to be wary of those people because they kill culture. And that's the thing that we're dealing with.
Man,
like,
that was in 2023 too. That just happened. Oh no, 2009. Okay. Still.
and Turkey's still not in the EU.
So they banned one of their part of their cultural heritage, and it didn't result in what they were hoping for.
Nope.
That's even worse.
I mean, yeah, because that's what happens when you try to appease these people. Every time you give them an inch, they'll take a fucking yard and still won't give you what the fuck you want. And that's why, to me, there's this. Those are dangerous people because they actually want things to be erased. It'd be different if they were okay with other things existing that they don't like, but they're not actually okay with that, which is that's super dangerous. That's a dangerous group to have to coexist with, which is why I think like when you don't have the inclination to destroy things you don't like, it's hard to imagine that person actually existing. But it's like Kevin Bacon just went to the school where they filmed Footloose as like an anniversary, but it's like that shit happened in real life. You and I went to raves when before the Rave Act, when raves got banned.
Yeah.
So like the idea of people enjoying themselves becoming unacceptable by another group that is then willing to legislate their capacity to enjoy themselves away. We've experienced that shit directly. It just wasn't in the form of food. And that's why it's like knowing that we lived through a real life Footloose, but it kind of got lost in our generation because so much other stuff happened. Like we lived through 9/11. So like the Rave Act wasn't really that big of a deal in comparison to like that or the Patriot Act. So when we're like getting our capacity to party taken away, the Patriot Act then coming along is a way bigger deal. So we didn't even have time to address the fucking Rave Act. And so I think that's where like
I
things
would
started
like to
happening.
address this right now. We partied so hard they banned us. That's what happened. We were so good at partying. They said, "No, guys, that's too much. That's just way too much. You can't party this hard. It's just not acceptable. We're gonna have to legislate now."
Well, but then that's where I'm like, okay, that's the absolute truth. But then knowing that the CIA was at the root of things like the Grateful Dead and pushing this notion of like doing drugs is a rebellion, we were the culmination of that. And the reason it became dangerous wasn't because we were having fun. The reason it became dangerous is because of Plur. Peace,
Yes.
love, unity, and respect. Once peace, love, unity, and respect became the mantra of raves, that's when raves became dangerous. They didn't give a fuck about the drugs. They just used the drugs to kill Plur. And I remember explicitly we were at it was a Sir Mix-a-Lot party. No fights. No, it was one of the there's been a few times where I can remember when like you get a bunch of young people together and like nobody gets into a fight and nobody gets like assaulted in any form. And this was one of the few. The cops showed up anyway. And they like came late enough that it didn't really feel like the party got shut down, but it definitely got shut down to the point where I'm like seeing a bunch of kids together, not fighting, enjoying themselves, dancing to Sir Mix-a-Lot, then seeing these fucking pigs show up and shut it down. That was all the proof I needed to know that these pigs didn't give a fuck about the safety of the kids. And it was the fact that these kids that got together and didn't fight that was the thing that was scaring the cops. Seeing that shit, you can't understand it until you see it. And people may never even put it together. Because this is why they fucking tried to kill Bob Marley. It wasn't the fact that he smoked weed. It was the fact that he was bringing together fucking gangs in Jamaica. That's the one thing that they really have lost in the hollow way that Bob Marley is like hoisted into this like weird fandom in America, because reggae is not tied to American culture, and the way it's just like about smoking weed really doesn't do Bob Marley justice in that, yeah, he was like stopping political violence and stopping gang violence. He happened to smoke a shitload of weed. So for the Western machine to reduce him down to that, that's not accidental. That's not them trying to be like, oh, you need to buy Bob Marley gear to support capitalism. No, they're trying to use capitalism to undermine peace. And this is only in the context of like arms companies. Okay, Eisenhower fucking warned us. This is something that people keep coming back to who have been aware of the military industrial complex. Eisenhower fucking warned us. So now, the only thing that our government will come together to do is to fucking buy arms and send arms abroad, that's when we have to put peace first. And that is the most important time to be focusing on peace, love, unity, and respect. And that is why fucking raves were fucking dangerous. Had nothing to do with the drugs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't actually go to raves for drugs.
Me neither. I didn't
There's
like drugs, man.
no.
I did not like drugs.
I actually
Like,
enjoyed going to a place with a sound system that was larger than anything that I could cram into a house.
shout out
And
to Ohio
oh my
Breakers,
god, those guys were the
because Ohio
best.
Breakers loved music, they loved dancing, and they did not allow drugs
Yeah,
into their
they
events.
had those straight edge parties. Those were the
Yeah,
best. The
shout out to Ohio
oh
Breakers.
yeah, the Dayton gym, that was my favorite place. And it didn't stink. Well, it
I'll
smelled
never
like an old
forget.
gym, but it didn't smell like a bunch of people using drugs.
You might have been at this party, Twilight Sleep, at the Dayton gym. I saw Twilight Sleep there. I don't know if you were there. You may have been, but it's the least amount of drugs I've ever seen at any party. Only people were only smoking weed. Like, if people were selling ecstasy, they would like, they didn't even have the cops kick them out. Like, the people were kicking them out. And so that's where I'm like, I've seen those parties. I've been to those parties where people only wanted, they only wanted drum and bass. They only wanted fucking breakdancing. They didn't want shit to do with drugs, and they didn't need some fucking pigs to tell them that.
I
So
actually
I've
remember a
been to
party at
those.
Dayton Gym Club where there was one chick who was very clearly on drugs and like too many. And all they did was make sure she had water and was safe. People posted her up next to the dance safe table, and they made sure nobody messed with her. And then her friends found her at some point because she disappeared from the table. But at least I assume, I'm hoping. Gym Club was the best.
Well, and that was one of the only places where you could get your drugs tested.
Oh yeah, because they always had the
Um,
dance safe table.
yeah, and they would test the drugs to tell you what was in them, and they wouldn't fucking call the cops on you. They just wanted to make sure people were taking the things that they thought they were
Yeah,
taking. And seeing shit like that, where
they
I'm
gave
like,
out free water.
yeah. So it's like, it's possible.
Yeah, no, that was one of those things. Like at a point, I was only attending parties that had the dance safe emblem on them, and then of course you'd find out, through the grapevine because promoters like to talk to each other, like, oh yeah, we're just throwing that on there to make people feel safe, and then like 9 times out of 10 the party doesn't have a dance safe table. They just have like a poster on an easel just in one corner that nobody's gonna see. Like that's enough. Those parties, I'm glad those parties didn't survive. Actually, I miss the big ones, but the big ones had their own problems,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
and I don't think that
None of it was perfect.
yeah, and even at the end when the parties were being taken away, I don't think that the culture would have been ready to embrace something like the parties in Dayton where they didn't do drugs. I think that the culture was still like rebellious and trying to be like, I'm here, I've landed, let's do this. I'm here to party. I'm going to show everyone how to party for real because I'm here now. And actually, you know what? The last of the people that I knew who were like that are they? I think they all checked out. I don't think I know very many people who are like that at all anymore.
Yeah.
The trajectory for that kind of lifestyle is not very long. It just goes up really high, really fast. Like the people that I know who've ended up becoming like club owners, they were never into drugs. They were always into the music. They just wanted to, show off their mad DJ skills and profound track selection. Uh, you know, uh, aesthetic. Their encyclopedic knowledge of a genre.
And I'm thinking of one very specific person. Shout out to Hollow Point for
Oh yeah.
fucking keeping it about the music and keeping the music alive. And that when drugs are trying to bring the scene down, it's like it's not lost on us.
Oh yeah.
The people who
He
recognize
has absolutely encyclopedic knowledge of drum and bass.
Yeah, that dude is like, yeah, I want to call him out specifically for being, it's like people like that keep the scene going without the negative shit. So we gotta preserve those people and protect them.
Oh man, I was watching a video of like a drum and bass party in England, and it was amazing. It looked like the biggest, giantest rave in a building. It wasn't like a amphitheater or a field. It was just a big rectangular cube shaped building, and shitty lighting and lasers and people looking sweaty and nasty, and it just looked like fun. I have no idea what it was like on the floor, but everyone was going nuts. We had that. We had parties like that, and there were people that weren't on drugs. Yeah, the drugs were. That's a bullshit excuse. There were plenty of examples where it wasn't failing. So yeah, you're right. These motherfuckers might take away my goddamn beef Wellington.
Exceptional radio. Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Bass Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.